Aha. Okay. Cool. Hello, friends. Had a minute figuring out how to turn off that little banner there. Um, Welcome to the Hack Your Coffee mini event. My name is Will. We are going to get started in just a second here. Just as Grandpa discovers the internet. I am so excited, y'all. This is my favorite thing to do for local Hack Day every year. And we're doing something a little bit different this time. We'll get into everything. But first, as people are trickling in, as we still have 4 minutes to go, I want everybody to drop in the chat the most recent cup of coffee you had, or if it wasn't coffee, anything. What did you drink, and what was your method for preparing it? So I will say that 2 days ago, because I didn't have any coffee yesterday, 2 days ago, I made myself a cortado, which is an espresso drink that has kind of half and half espresso and milk. And I did it on my espresso machine Flo back here. Oh, there she is, getting used to pointing. But so drop in the chat what the most recent cup of coffee you had. And to be clear, like if you had some instant and you just poured some hot water over it, like that's totally cool. Tell us that. I see someone did some masala tea. That's awesome. Somebody said they put some coffee powder and some sugar in a cup. Cool. This is very, very cool to see, because this is actually the reason that we're doing what we're doing today, is because I almost said last year. I guess technically it was last year. But last time we did this event, I was doing some espresso and I was kind of playing with ratios, and I was trying to see, hey, how is everybody liking this? And one of the most common things people said is like, Will, I don't have an espresso machine. Like I'm over here either, drinking instant, or maybe I have a French press or something. And what I thought we would do, because that advice is not super applicable, is actually go through pretty much every way that I brew coffee, which is, I guess we have 5 or 6 methods here. I may or may not actually brew espresso because I've got some things laid out here. But we're going to talk about instant. We're going to talk about French press. We're going to talk about the Aeropress. We're going to talk about pour over. And specifically, we're going to rate these in terms of how much of a hassle they are, right? Because I think this is like a big thing that sometimes I wake up in the morning and I'm ready to do science with espresso. And some mornings I wake up and I'm like, I have a meeting in 10 minutes and I just would like a cup of something warm in front of me, And so all these different ways of brewing coffee kind of hold a different place in my life. Let's check back in with the chat. We got a lot of instant. We got some masala tea. That's super cool. We have some folks that remember last time. That's cool. Instant coffee with cocoa powder. That's kind of fun. +1 for Choco Coffee. Lemon Star Coffee. I don't know if that's a brand or if that's like a thing of putting lemon in your coffee, but that's pretty cool. Dark chocolate and a cup of hot milk. Nice. We got 2 minutes to go. At first, I thought that I was going to have to start the stream and then grind the beans. And I think I did this last time and I muted myself. I still don't know how to like effectively play music on stream. I should learn that. But today I scrambled and I ground all of our coffee beforehand. I am really excited to look over the different grinds and like, what does a grind for French press look like? What does a grind for Aeropress look like? Oh, I forgot. I actually have some cold brew that I made last night because I wanted to show that as a method too. So I'll pull out the cold brew. Or maybe it would be more dramatic if I pulled out the cold brew like when I was ready. Where is the cold brew? Oh, there it is. I actually really don't want y'all seeing inside my fridge. It's kind of a disaster. You know what I do want y'all seeing inside of? I do want you to see inside my my pantry. I recently just did a like pantry reorganization. It was pretty incredible. Okay, one question we have: what will I learn from this session? Great question. So you will learn, I guess, 6 different methods of brewing coffee, what the pros and cons are of them, what different taste profiles look like, what kind of grind to use for them, and specifically like how much of a hassle they are. That's kind of like the meta theme of this. If we get to the end and we still have some time, we will talk about extraction theory, which I think is so cool. We'll get back to the nerddom. I feel like most hack your espressos have been very like nerd focused. This one's a little bit more practical, but if we have time at the end, we will revert back to nerd mode, I promise. Hey, Adam. Adam's in the chat. Adam's like formerly a coffee professional. So hit up Adam with some questions. Ooh, okay. Someone mentioned salt in their coffee, which we're going to talk about salt in coffee, and I'm a big proponent of it. I think we're going to start off with instant, and I think instant is where is kind of where I don't have too much advice except for that. Okay, well, so we've hit 10 o'clock, and so 10 o'clock for me. And so we will get started. Hello, everyone. My name is Will. I am full-time a software engineer at Google, and then I also am a coach for Major League Hacking. But more importantly for us now, I am a coffee enthusiast. I really, really like coffee. And there are so many things that I like about coffee. I like that. Oh, pardon me. Trying to rearrange my windows before I like really get into like Will shouting at the camera mode, because once I start shouting at the camera, nothing else is happening. So I really like coffee. I like how it smells. I like how it tastes. I like how it could be like a catalyst for ritual. I like how it could be something to share with someone that you care about. I like how it can make you think about sustainability. I like how it can be like an option for scientific experimentation and play. And I really, really love caffeine, as you may be able to tell from my enthusiasm here. And I love getting to share coffee with you at local hack day for the third time in a row now. Last time we were experimenting with ratios, basically like how much coffee do you put in versus how much water, and then how much coffee do you get out. And one of the most common questions that we got back then a couple months ago was, hey, Will, this is great, but I don't have an espresso machine. How can I make better coffee? Right. And while I mentioned that I love the ritual that coffee can create, it can also create like a lot of hassle. It can also just like require a lot of work. And so kind of the idea for this session is looking at a bunch of different methods for brewing coffee, really ordered by hassle, right? We're going to give each of our methods of brewing coffee a hassle score. And we're going to start with instant. I'm going to check back in with some comments. Oh, someone said that I have a beautiful kitchen. Thank you. Someone said we want to know about things except instant coffee. Well, we will cover instant because last time everybody was like, hey, Will, I'm drinking instant. What should I do? And we're going to talk about that next. Let's see. Someone said prove this video isn't looped. And so I will say hi to whoever said that. And someone's asking for some coffee basics, which is really what we're doing today. We're really going to look at some coffee basics. So we are going to run through 6 different brewing methods. We're going to look at instant, which kind of counts. We're going to look at cold brew right here. We're going to look at French press. We're going to look at Aeropress. We're going to look at pour over with a Kalito wave. And then if we have time, we may also brew some espresso with Flo sitting back there. That's kind of our roadmap. And let's start with instant coffee. So in general, I am not a big fan of instant coffee. Usually, in my opinion, it doesn't taste that great. And from what I understand, it's actually not the most sustainably produced usually. Usually you'll have practices of, that maybe are not great for the farmers, or maybe practices that are, not that sustainable from like an environmental perspective. But it is really, really convenient, and it can be really cheap, right? A fun story is I live in Seattle now, but my family lives in Nashville. And fun fact, my family is Mormon and so does not drink coffee. So they don't have any coffee there. And I used to, whenever I would go back and visit my family, I would bring like this kettle in my carry-on, and then I'd bring usually this, and I would like have this whole setup that I would kind of set up my little coffee station. And that was cool. It was kind of fun. But it was like a lot of work, right? And so much so that I had actually just started bringing a small canister of instant coffee with me. This is one thing we're going to do is I'm going to try to hop up to the camera and show you exactly what each of these sort of grind-wise looks like. So let's see. I need some better light. Maybe I can move some light over here. But the upshot here, can you see that at all? That's really dark. The upshot here is that it is just a powder, right? You don't see any actual particles of coffee, and that's that. I am going to brew some instant coffee and have some of it. Let me grab like a teaspoon. Boom. In terms of like tips for trying to make instant coffee better, well, I guess we should cover the actual brew method. So you take, a teaspoon. I usually, for a normal cup, will do about 2 teaspoons of the coffee, and then just fill it up, with water. That's kind of the sort of level 1 standard brew method. Oh, okay. Maybe this is going to be easier to show the powder. There you go. You can kind of make that out. So you have some powder down there. And then more or less, you're just pouring your water on there. In terms of temperature of water, the coffee is already brewed. Some people are like, oh, you want really hot water, or you want really cold water, or you want medium temperature water. I think you should just use whatever temperature water like you want to drink at. If you want to drink really hot coffee, then put really hot water in there. As far as I understand, nothing is happening based on the temperature of your water when you're making instant coffee. So that's like level 1, right? But how do we spice this up, right? So my first recommendation is maybe try one of these other methods, right? I think that all of these are like much more fun and cooler and will give you better tasting coffee than instant. But if you are like, no, I am really here for some instant coffee, then I have a couple suggestions for you. One, because so much of the coffee, when it comes to instant coffee, is already done, right? It's already finished when you buy the thing. Then a lot of it's determined by the brand you buy, right? So I would experiment with different brands. Even if you're buying really cheap brands, I would still, try 1 or 2 of them. Next time you need to get some coffee, don't get the same coffee, right? There are also a couple companies. There's a company called Swift Cup that they are a little bit pricier, but they make an instant coffee that I actually think is really good. I also don't mind. This is Starbucks blonde roast espresso, instant espresso. Instant coffee. I don't mind that either, but I'd recommend, trying a few and seeing what you like. The other thing I would say is that normally I like my coffee about as black as I can get it, right? Like just coffee and water, right? I mentioned cortados, which I have a little bit of milk in them. But when it comes to instant, I actually think it's a good idea to zhuzh up your coffee like any way you know how. Put some milk or some cream or like anything else, some chocolate sauce, some sugar. I actually think like a brown sugar syrup is really good in coffee. And I think that's really good. So playing with it. And then finally, my actual final tip, someone mentioned this, is put just the tiniest amount of salt in your coffee. People will like freak out when you do this, but I think it actually is really good. I'm gonna go grab my little salt thing. I know some people will actually make a little saline solution, a little salt solution, and then like drop some in there. I haven't done that yet, but I'm probably headed that way. But so like literally just like 4 grains of salt, right? And then I'll grab a spoon to stir it up. Woo. Someone asked if I add milk, and normally I absolutely would. Today, because I don't want to deal with the hassle of pulling milk out of the fridge and then exposing my very messy fridge to y'all again, I'm not going to. But yes, normally I would add some milk to this. Actually, this is another pro tip, is you don't actually have to have water at all. Get a cup full of milk, put that in the microwave or on the stove or whatever, heat that up, and then just add your espresso directly to that. And at that point, you're drinking mostly milk, and so you can't be bummed out by the fact that the instant coffee doesn't smell that, or doesn't taste that great. So I'm going to take a sip of this, and we're going to check back in with some comments. Let's see. Oh, lots of comments. This is great. Someone's drinking Nescafe. Adam's drinking tea. Adam, you're a coffee professional. Why are you drinking tea? IoT, automate your coffee machine. I actually love this, even just from the perspective of like getting like a smart plug and like automatically turning on your coffee machine in the morning. I think that's a brilliant idea. Welcome from India. Thank you for drinking some coffee or tea with us at 11:40 p.m. That is commitment. Is that Arabica? Yes. So we could talk about this. Most instant coffee is actually a different species of coffee than like all the other coffees. There are 2 big species of coffee. There's Arabica and there's Robusta. And in general, we think of Arabica as like tasting good, but being a little bit harder to grow. And then Robusta as being not that good tasting, but really easy to grow and really high in caffeine, actually. And a lot of instant coffee comes from Robusta. So this is actually something that I would recommend is like on your coffee can, if it actually mentions, is this Robusta, is this Arabica? And I'm pretty sure this actually is, yes, it says 100% Arabica. I'll like jump up and show that as well. I don't know if that'll be, oh, that's not going to be legible, is it? Y'all, I need to get a little macro lens sometime. But yeah, that's like one tip is if you find an instant that is Arabica, that might give you, you know, slightly better sort of classic coffee taste. Someone asked, doesn't hot water dissolve the powder better, easier? Yeah, that's absolutely true. I think most coffee, I mean, coffee is water soluble. So even if it's just warm water, if you stir it a little bit, it will dissolve. If it's warm milk, it'll dissolve. Oh, someone's mentioning that that you could put actual instant coffee on the tip of the cup and taste that. You absolutely could. I don't know if I'd recommend that, but you would get an interesting experience. Adam wants to see inside the fridge. Maybe later. Maybe not on an official stream. Maybe just on Discord sometime. Actually, if I get to show you my pantry that I just reorganized, y'all, I love reorganizing stuff. There is no drug on earth as strong as the joy you get from reorganizing a closet. Ginger lemon honey tea is better. I don't know what you're saying that it's better than. I like a lemony gingery tea. I wouldn't say that it's better than coffee though. Let's see. How many local hack days will we have to do before I cover everything I want to talk about with coffee? Infinity. There's not enough sessions that we could do where we could actually get through everything I want to talk about coffee, because every day I'm learning something new, y'all. This is actually okay. I promise to kind of stick to the actual plan here in a second, but I do want to show one thing before we head off. I don't know if you can hear me. I think I used this last time, but this is my Refractometer. And if you really want to like go down the nerdiest of rabbit holes with coffee, this is a really, really cool device. I think this one cost about $100, so it's not cheap. But what you do is you put a little bit of coffee on this little sensor here. And what it does is it actually measures how light bends through your coffee, because actually light bends more when your coffee is stronger. This is a thing that we know about water and light and coffee solubles. And so you can actually measure how strong of your coffee is by how the light bends through it. Very, very neat, fun toy to play with. Absolutely unnecessary. Nobody needs one of these, but like one day we're just going to do a session just on coffee refractometry. And that'll be a blast. But until then, let's stick to the basics here. We're gonna do some practical brew advice. Someone's confused about this being a tech channel. Hey, coffee is technology. I don't know what you're talking about. Actually, it is true that I feel like 99% of all technology out there was made possible by coffee. Okay, so that's instant. I'm gonna put my instant over there. The highlights, maybe try something else, but if you really are committed to instant, try different brands, try sprucing it up with additives. I really like a brown sugar syrup. You can make it at home, just combine brown sugar and water and stir it together. And then the final one is I actually would recommend a tiny, tiny amount of salt in there. I think it's a great option. Okay, now let's get to cold brew. Cold brew actually was the first kind of coffee that I ever brewed myself. Cold brew is great. If instant coffee is a 0 on the hassle scale, then I will say that cold brew is probably a 2 if we're going like 0 to 10, right? Cold brew is really easy. Really, your process for this looks like either buying really, really coarsely ground beans or grinding beans really coarsely yourself, putting them into a jar with some water, sticking that jar in your fridge for like 12 hours to 48 hours. The longer it sits in there, the stronger your coffee is going to be. Now, I'm going to uncork this. Oh, that was a fun sound. And we're going to get up close and see what this looks like right now without me spilling it everywhere. You can maybe see a little bit. It just has a bunch of coffee floating around in there. Now, once you're done, this has been brewing for about 12 hours. you have a couple options. You need to actually separate out the grounds somehow. I know this is kind of cheating because we're doubling up on methods, but my favorite method for filtering out the grounds is actually to use a French press. So we'll get to the French press in a second, but I will grab another French press. Boom, another French press. I have 3 of these for coffee tastings. Don't ask me why. Whew. And we will just carefully pour our cold brew into our French press. Oh, did you see that? I didn't even spill. That's been sitting for 12 hours now, ish, plus or minus. And we will push that down, and then we'll just pour it out. And I'll pour it into something glass so you can actually see it. Boom. This is one that actually, I know I said I wasn't going to open my fridge. I am just going to grab some milk. I'm just going to keep it out, get the table very messy. And I will pour some milk in here and I will drink it. But so this, you get a jar or a couple of jars, you get a French press. This is a really forgiving method. I mentioned this is like the first kind of coffee that I brewed myself. A couple of years ago, I was interning in Boston, actually on Amazon Alexa, and the office coffee there was not very good. It was not very good at all. But so I had like a fridge full of mason jars full of coffee, and I would bring that into work every day. And even when it was like snowing outside, I would still bring my cold brew coffee because it tasted good. I think it can be really, really tasty. So cold brew, I think, is one of the things that if we get to talking about extraction theory, we will go nuts on. But because you are not using heat, you are getting a different side of the coffee out of it, right? All our other methods use heat. Cold brew just uses time in order to pull stuff out. And so you see kind of a different side of the coffee. In general, I think it's a lot more forgiving of a method of brewing. You don't really need to know what you're doing. You just throw some coffee into a jar. The one thing I will say is that you want to put a really, really wide grind size or a coarse grind size. You want your grinds to look really, really big. In fact, I'll show you French press in a second. You want your grounds even bigger than that. So I will drink some of this cold brew and I will check back in with some comments. Someone said, isn't coffee dependency part of the freshman engineering grade? Yeah, it 100% is. Yeah, 100%, not 99% of software. This is true. I am drinking this, and it's actually really bringing me back to Boston just because I drank like exclusively cold brew in Boston. One fun fact, I think actually on average, cold brew is a little bit more acidic. It's a little bit tangier. And so if you drink a ton of cold brew, you may notice some acid things going on in your tummy. So just be aware of that. Someone tried not having any caffeinated drinks for 3 months and succeeded. Good for you. I mean, to be fair, like I had no caffeinated drinks for the first 20 years of my life, and I was fine. And then I had some coffee and I was like, dang, this ish is delicious. I bet Will's Kitchen smells like Starbucks. I would argue that it smells better than Starbucks, but what are you gonna do? Will, don't lie. Emma Chamberlain introduced you to cold brew. So I don't know who Emma Chamberlain is, but I'm sure they have interesting thoughts on cold brew. I'll look them up. No, if you want to know someone that I take like 99% of all my ideas of coffee on, James Hoffman on YouTube, just like a delightful individual, incredible, soothing voice, and some really, really, really fun ideas about coffee. Someone asked if I add sugar. As a general rule, I almost never add just plain sugar to my coffee. I just don't like things very sweet. No shame if you like things sweet, like do what feels good to you. I'll say that if I wanted something sweet, I probably would go for some chocolate in the coffee instead of like just straight sugar. Or I think I mentioned this, some brown sugar. I think brown sugar can taste really, really good in coffee. So there's that. Someone said about extraction, how do I get the bitter notes on instant coffee? Okay, so this is great. We could talk about extraction theory. I'll try to speed it up. so we can sort of get to the cool stuff. Also, I just got a notification that I have a meeting with my manager in 30 minutes. Okay, no, this is a false alarm. I was about to freak out. Cool. We're back at it. Hot cold brew. Okay, I actually think hot cold brew is a very interesting idea. Like, can you just brew something cold and then heat it up to drink it? I've done it a couple times. I think on paper it sounds like a really, really fun idea. In practice, it has never been my favorite thing. But yeah, you can make hot cold brew and maybe give that a shot. See if that's a good time. Okay, someone's asking what a French press does, and we could talk about that now because we're getting to French press. Okay, so cold brew on the hassle scale, I would give it like a 2. Instant gets a 0. Cold brew gets a 2. Next, we'll move to French press, which I actually also would probably give a 2 on the hassle score. So French press is about as simple as you can get. I'll actually bring the device over here. And so any French press will usually have some kind of vessel here, and then it'll have some kind of filter that plunges down. So the idea is we're going to have our coffee brewing in here, just floating around, kind of like with our cold brew. We'll add hot water in there, and then when it is ready, we will be able to filter the coffee through this little filter that plunges down. You can see the filter has a little bit of mesh on the end there. So that's kind of the long and the short of French press. The one caveat is cold brew does not require you to have a kettle, which is kind of powerful if you are in, like a dorm and you don't have, space for a kettle, but maybe you have access to a fridge. Cold brew maybe is a better option. But I think French press is pretty simple. So I'll bring over the French press grounds. I will say this is actually literally the coarsest that my grinder will go to. What if I just literally show like, okay, there we go. Now you can see that. So there are our French press grounds. I honestly, if I had a grinder that would go even coarser, I might go even a little bit coarser than this. So we'll add our grounds to our French press. We're bringing our water back up. In general, we think that brewing most kinds of coffee, going about as hot as you can, which would be 100 degrees Celsius, is probably a good idea, or at very least a fine idea. Especially for espresso, but even for some other varieties of coffee, I might actually make the coffee water a little bit lower in temp, which we will talk about that a little bit later. But the long and the short of it is that slightly less hot water will give us slightly less bitter coffee, and we can talk about why that is. Okay, so our water is back up to temp. I'm doing 95 degrees Celsius, and we will just pour in our water. We won't get too much into ratios here, just because that's like a whole other world of measurements, and then I got to talk about grams and like weighing things. But in general, I would recommend weighing how much water you're adding and how much coffee you're adding. And I know this French press pretty well. I know like how much water gets up to there and how much coffee I put in there. But this is actually really, really pretty. I'll see if you can actually see this. Is that when you pour that in there, you get a lot of bubbles. You get a lot of frothy stuff, which actually, fun fact, is actually the releasing of CO2 that was put in the beans when they were roasted. Roasting produces a lot of CO2 that gets trapped in the beans. And when you pour in that hot water, it kind of releases it. So I will usually, after pouring in that water, I'll set a timer for 4 minutes. We'll keep an eye on the clock at 28-ish. We'll come back to this. But we will kind of let that sit over there for a second. So that is French press. I think French press is a really, really great option. It requires that you have a kettle. It requires that you have a French press. But notably, you don't have to have any papers or anything else disposable, right? Okay. Fun fact, hot chocolate is caffeinated. Very, very faintly. But yeah, hot chocolate is a little bit caffeinated. Lavender sugar in coffee. It's not bad. Interesting. Lavender is one of those flavors that I have never fully gotten on board with, but I think that says more about me than it does say about lavender. I love the smell, but as like a taste, not my favorite. Hazelnut and coffee, I think, is actually a great combo. Someone asked, what are my thoughts on flavored coffee? Yeah, so I will say, I'm a coffee nerd. I actually like the taste of coffee, right? Like I think picking out little subtle notes just in the actual plant is really really fun. But I think that I think that if you're not drinking very high quality coffee, then masking it with other flavors can be a good time. I also think that coffee is a good team player, and I think there are lots of collaborations flavor wise that work really well. I actually this past season had my first pumpkin spice latte, and I thought it was delicious. Right, it's not what I want to drink every day, but I thought it tasted really really good. I think I mentioned brown sugar in coffee is I think really tasty. I've had peppermint coffees before that were okay for me. They weren't my favorite thing in the world, but they weren't bad. So much coffee. Yes, yes, yes. I'm gonna have a lot of utensils to wash today. That is true. Oh, someone asked the art on my fridge. So this is actually a coffee tasting chart where it gives you notes if you're trying to pick out what something tastes like. I'll see if I can actually. I'm not going to change the orientation of the camera, but I'll see if I can just zoom in. Okay, you can't see much, but basically you start in the center here. You have sort of the big categories of flavors like fruity or sweet or green or sour or roasty. And then you kind of get more specific as you move out of the circle. It's a really cool tool if you taste something and you're I'm not sure what I just tasted. A tasting chart like that can be super helpful to kind of put a word to it. I'll say you don't need to buy a poster. You can find this online and you can just you can just look it up. But it's kind of fun. I am a coffee nerd. Yeah. Well, that's why I don't have 2 French presses. I actually have 3 French presses because I like to do tastings where I put 3 coffees out and we taste all of them. It's a fun little group activity. Okay, so we're waiting for this to brew, and so we get to talk about what I think is possibly my second favorite way to brew coffee after espresso, which is the Aeropress. Aeropress is actually, I think, the most recent of all of these methods. It was invented, I want to say, in the 60s or 70s. It's a really, really sort of novel device, and people really, really seem to like it. People will get very religious about Aeropress. To kind of recap our scores, instant coffee in terms of hassle, I give it a 0 on the hassle scale. For cold brew, I give that a 2. For French press, I actually also give it a 2. You have to have a kettle, but you don't have to wait. So, kind of a trade-off. Aeropress, we're probably jumping up to a 4. There are some moving parts here. So I'll kind of walk through the basic mechanism. The first thing you need to understand is that you need a paper filter. They make metal filters for the Aeropress. I personally think the paper filters taste better, or they make better tasting coffee. So you can get a little stand like this that has all of these little papers in there. And you pull one paper off. That is your paper filter. And so what our process is going to look like is we're going to add the ground coffee into the middle of this little piston thing, right? So the coffee will sit kind of right here. Then we will pour hot water on top of it. And then we use this little filter holder and we place our paper filter inside of it. And then we will screw that on top. And then we will literally, like a plunger, we will just push this through. And that actually will create a sort of closed pressure cell where we will actually press the air, ergo Aeropress, and that will press the coffee through our filter. A lot of people say that Aeropress makes sort of like espresso-like coffee. And I don't think it's right to say that this is actually making espresso. I think it is fair to say that it's about as close to espresso as you get without an actual espresso machine. Let's see. Will is officially the caffeinated MLHer. I will wear that title with pride. I need to get that on a shirt. I need to say caffeinated MLHer. Cappuccino versus latte versus mocha. What do I prefer? Yeah, so in terms of espresso beverages, we can talk about more if we actually end up getting to espresso, which at this rate we may not, but we'll see. In general, I think similarly to not wanting to add too much sugar or other stuff, I usually like my espresso where it's mostly espresso and usually a little bit of water on top. I think all of these drinks are cool and tasty and have their own things going for them. I've actually been to a coffee shop. I forget what it was called, but their focus was we have cows right out back and we milk them and then put that milk into this coffee. And it's like the emphasis is the milk. And I thought the latte there was really, really delicious. normally, if I'm just going to a coffee shop I don't know anything about, normally I will ask for a cappuccino because that's like pretty concentrated in terms of coffee or in terms of espresso. And like, I know that they will not look at me funny. If I'm at a coffee shop that I know, or sort of like a third wave, more specialty place, usually I will order a cortado, which is kind of like a cappuccino. It just doesn't have as much foam, and has a little bit less milk usually. So that's kind of my normal coffee order. Let's see. Someone asked if I'm vegan. I am not vegan. I am vegetarian. I've been vegetarian for like a couple years now, like 2 years. I do on occasion. I think for Thanksgiving, I eat turkey. That's kind of the one meat that I regularly eat. But beyond that, vegetarian. Let's see. 10 is you're feeling electrocuted. How caffeinated do I get? Okay, y'all. Actually, maybe this will be the next session. We'll be purely talking about like caffeine dependency and caffeine like withdrawal and caffeine like how it makes you feel, because I think this is a really interesting topic that I personally have thought about a lot, and I think it's like very helpful to like understand you're putting a drug into your body. Okay, before we brew this, this is now ready to be consumed, right? So we have brewed. You can see it settled a little bit. I actually, fun fact, don't like actually pushing it down because I think that agitates things and makes it more likely that you will get actual coffee pieces or like grounds in your coffee. And so my general go-to is literally just holding it there, not pressing down, and then just pouring into the cup. And usually that means it pours pretty slowly, but I'm okay with waiting. I will go back to my seat because this is taking a while. And actually, one fun fact is that if it's pouring really slowly like this, that might be a sign that you ground too finely, right? So I might have wanted to grind even a little bit coarser. But I'll take a sip of that. Still very hot. Taste-wise, I think French press is really good. One of the things that people will always mention is that French press has a lot of body. Because you are not filtering with a paper filter, a lot of the coffee oils actually get through. And so you'll end up with a cup of coffee that has like a lot of like it feels almost, I need to find a good descriptor, like almost like texture-wise, a little like jammy, a little, it has a lot of body to it. It'll feel like almost creamy, like you're drinking cream. And I'll say that the French press is pretty hard to mess up. It really kind of like lets the original coffee shine through. So you taste a lot of the specifics of this coffee. This is an Ethiopian coffee, and I'm tasting like a lot of like stone fruit, like a lot of like plums going on. Really, really tasty cup of coffee. Okay. Yes, vegetarians unite. Oh, thank you for liking my laptop stand. Yeah, it's really nice to type on that. Woo will. What does pressing down normally do? Oh, great question. So I didn't press down. The normal way of using a French press is to press down. And what it does is it pushes all the grounds to the bottom and it pushes all the water up, so it's faster to pour. The other thing this does is that it agitates the coffee and it can actually push through some of your grounds, some of your tiny grounds. So you might actually end up with a little bit of silt at the bottom of your coffee cup, which some people are into, but it's not personally like my favorite thing. Oh my goodness, we have a fun reunion going on. Jacqueline, so good to see you. So good to see you, Hannah. Oh, this is so much fun. Let's see. Oh, someone wants to see mugs. I actually have a lot of these mugs, and then I have a lot of really cute glasses, which I can show later if we get to it. But it's time to brew some Aeropress. So I will come up to the front here. I won't actually hold it up because this is a little bit of a funkier brew method. So you're gonna want to pull this down so there's a lot of space in your piston. You will pour your pretty finely ground coffee. Oh, I almost forgot. For Aeropress, you are grinding pretty fine. This is, except for espresso, sort of the finest grind that we're going to play with. Here, let me get some light on there for you. Boom. Okay, you can kind of see. Not quite powder, but almost to that point. So you dump your coffee in there, and then you will pour your water on top. Again, normally I would really recommend measuring all of your all of your weights, measure how much coffee's going in, measure how much water you're putting on top. I'm using consistently 20 grams throughout all of these. And so then sometimes you're going to want to give it a little bit of a stir, which I will do. Why don't I just grab a bunch of little spoons here? Someone was really right about me needing to do the dishes after this. Give it a little stir. And then normally for Aeropress, people like different things, but I usually am only letting it sit for a minute or two. So we'll give it a minute or two, and then we will actually get to brewing that. And it looks like we're actually doing pretty well on time. We've gotten through almost 4 brew methods. We have done instant, where the hassle is like a 0. We've done cold brew and French press, where the hassle is kind of like a 2. Aeropress, we're thinking maybe it's a 4. Oh, that French press is really good. I need to get back into French press brewing, honestly. Bean juice. Honestly, who needs code when you have coffee? Honestly, who can have code without coffee, right? Someone asked, do you get the taste of paper if the paper melts due to hot water? This is a great question. If you're buying like low quality coffee papers, you might be getting a taste imparted from them. Usually if you're getting, even just like standard coffee papers, you should not have much of a taste. The one thing is I don't do this with Aeropress just because it's a little bit funkier. But for pour over, we'll actually I'll put the paper in and I will actually wash the paper by pouring some water over it and letting that just seep through and then pouring that out. Because that actually does help kind of get the flavor out. But you shouldn't have problems with your papers falling apart unless you're buying like sketchy papers from some guy on the corner, If your papers are falling apart, then find better papers. So we've given it about a minute to sit. We are going to put this over, screw it on. It kind of clicks in there. This is the one part that some people kind of find scary is you have to actually, flip this over with the hot water inside. Sometimes I'll even set up my cup. So you flip over, you can see it's already coming out. And then you are just going to very slowly, but very consistently press down. And you can see that I'm actually still really, there's a lot of space in there because I'm just pushing on the air at this point. And then you can start here, air popping out, and that's when you know you're basically done. But you can keep it going. And then actually, my favorite part of Aeropress, probably more favorite than even the coffee it makes, is that it is a dream to clean up. All you do is you take off this, you take off the little filter here, and then you just continue to push this up. This is dangerous, but I'll do it anyway. And then this little puck just pops off. You put that in the trash, and you're basically done cleanup-wise, which I think is really incredible. But we'll just leave it here for now. So we have some Aeropress. You can see it doesn't make a ton of coffee. It is a little bit darker than some of the other methods. It smells pretty strong. I'm getting a lot of sort of berry stuff coming out in this brew. That is really tasty. I need to get better at letting the descriptor words fly, but it's really tangy. It's really clear. The French press gave you kind of a little bit more of a robust body. But with the Aeropress, you're getting a lot of strength without sort of the heaviness on the low end. You're getting kind of a lot of florally, fruity, stone fruity sort of notes. It's just incredibly smooth. I am really into Aeropress. All right, let's check back in with the comments. Oh no, Jack. You're supposed to use an entire bag of sugar. No, you're supposed to use no sugar. You're supposed to use 0 sugar. I mean, follow your heart, but I would recommend using as small a quantity of sugar as you can stomach. Let's see. I don't do coffee, but I do other caffeine like water and occasionally soda. There you go. Yeah, I feel like my speed probably is increasing. I think I mentioned this at the beginning yesterday to prepare for all the coffee I was going to drink. I did not drink any coffee. And so I was really tired yesterday. And then now I'm just cup after cup. I am really getting energized. So it's good stuff. Is mint coffee a good idea? Ooh, okay. Mint coffee sounds interesting. Again, I usually like tasting just the raw flavors of the coffee because, I'm a coffee nerd. But I think it's fun to play around. And I think mint actually could be a fun flavor combo. Cool. Did I buy any of these tools for this event? No, actually, I had. Yeah, sadly, I had all of this stuff already. Not sadly, it was a fun time. I mean, I've acquired all this stuff over a couple years of being a coffee nerd. I actually think the first thing that I got was a French press to make cold brew, and then I got an Aeropress, and then I got a pour over, and then finally I added an espresso machine to the mix. Hmm. Someone said maybe stronger than whiskey. Yeah. Um, OED needs to spawn will. What is OED? Hmm. Do I use coffee frother? Oh, there's a poll, Will. Wait, where is the poll? Let's transition back to Grandpa discovers the internet. Oh, Oxford English Dictionary. Incredible. Yeah, no, I would dig it. Hmm. Oh, on Twitch. Hmm. Mm. Aeropress seems like more work for little result. Yeah, so I think that, I mean, we mentioned this, the Aeropress is probably a 4 on the hassle scale. If you're just looking for a way to kind of simply get some decent coffee into your system, then something like French press or cold brew might be a little bit up your alley. If you want to start playing with stuff a little bit more, then Aeropress gives you kind of one level up. It gives you something that's kind of like espresso. I find it delicious. It can be actually pretty quick. Both French press and cold brew, you need to wait some time for it to brew. Aeropress, you are actually getting that coffee out pretty quick in like a minute or two. There are more steps, but if you get used to it, you can make it pretty fast. Someone said 4 cups a day, according to the CDC. Yeah, no, I actually try to keep my caffeine consumption under 4 cups. Every so often, I will drink 4 cups in a day. There's also this question of like, what is a cup? I mean, like, I haven't finished any of these coffee beverages. I will probably only finish 1 or 2 of them. Let's see. Ruining your sleep schedule. Yes. Okay. We're going to do a session at some future date that is just like living with coffee. Like how do you take care of your stomach and your teeth and your sleep schedule? Because there's lots to say on all of these. Let's see. Oxford English Dictionary. Lemon and cinnamon. I have not tried lemon and cinnamon in my coffee. I have done coffee in coffee. I have done cinnamon in coffee before, and that has been a good time. But I've never tried lemon. Another question about sugar. I usually don't add any sugar to my coffee. If I'm doing instant, sometimes I will do like a brown sugar syrup or something. But most of these methods, I wouldn't add sugar. I might add a little bit of milk. But again, that's a taste thing. And, I don't want to tell you how to enjoy your coffee, except this whole session is about me telling you how to enjoy your coffee. So, your mileage may vary. Do you prefer a harder way to do it if you have more time, or easier way and less time? Yeah, that's a great question. I will say 95% of the days I wake up in the morning and the first thing I do is I make an espresso. I usually just try to carve out time for it because I really, really like espresso. But certainly there are times, I mean, like if I'm on a road trip, I will get like a can of cold brew and like that'll be my coffee for the day, So I think that sort of the flexibility there is helpful. Someone asked if I like any beverage other than coffee. Yeah, I mean, so first of all, I think water is incredible. I'm actually a pretty big water nerd too. I love staying hydrated. Hydrate or dihydrate, my friends. Other beverages, I actually really like oolong tea. I'm a fan of oolong. I like a lot of juices. I'm a big fan of pineapple juice. I like hot chocolate. I like lots of things, but coffee is kind of at the top of the list. Someone asked about coffee subscriptions. Yeah, so I think that coffee subscriptions are really cool. I have never signed up for one. I will say one of my underrated tips for trying to get better coffee is getting really freshly roasted coffee. And usually, if you were trying to get really freshly roasted coffee, you are probably getting that from a local roaster. So this has been like one thing that I have changed, where I basically don't buy coffee anywhere from a coffee except from a coffee store. There are a couple of local coffee stores in Seattle that I really like. Sometimes they'll like know my name. They usually give you a discount on like a brew coffee if you buy a bag of coffee. And so that's one thing that I've done that I really like. And it's kind of fun to feel like I'm connected to those 2 local coffee shops I go to. Also, Seattle is kind of anomalous in that we have like a lot of really, really good small roasters, and a lot of cities don't have as many. But yeah, I think there are a lot of coffee subscriptions that can provide really, really good coffee too. Let's see. Kombucha update. Yeah, if we have time at the end, we will do some kombucha updates. Someone asked about me roasting beans. I actually really want to. That's kind of the next level where I'm like, it's gonna be a lot of hassle. Like if this is a 4, roasting your own beans is like a 16. Roasting your own beans is like a lot of work. But I am actually really interested in doing it. If I do roast my own coffee, we'll do that in a session in the future, and we'll talk about roasting. And everyone will be like, Will, this is cool, but I can't use this because I don't have a coffee roaster. Okay. I've taken my time drinking my Aeropress, so maybe we move on now to pour over. So pour over is like an interesting beast. Pour over, in terms of hassle, when I was thinking about this, I really was thinking, actually, pour over, the hassle, it can range from like a 3 all the way to like a 6, right? Because some people do pour over pretty simply. I mean, even just like a brew coffee maker is like kind of a pour over machine, all the way up to the, people like having a probe to measure the temperature inside the beans versus above the beans, and measuring their weight in and their weight out, and maybe even measuring like their pour pattern. All of these things, like people can really nerd out about pour over. So it really, really spans a really wide range. I'll show you the grind that I have for pour over, and then we'll talk about sort of the basic method here. So the grind is pretty fine, but not as fine as Espresso or as fine as Aeropress. It kind of sits somewhere in the middle there. I've actually found that with brewers that have a flat bottom, you have lots of different kinds of brewers like this. If it has a flat bottom, you might want a little bit coarser of a grind. So the basic process here is you have a little brewer like this. It usually has a handle. It's usually cone shaped, and it has some holes at the bottom. And then what you will do is you'll usually have a stack of papers like this. You will pull off a paper. You'll throw that paper into the little chamber there. You will place your brewer above something. I'm using something glass just because I think it's fun for you to be able to see it. But I think that normally you would just put this over whatever mug you want to drink it in. And then this is where you can start getting into sort of different methods, right? So one thing that I like to do with pour over is actually to wash the paper first. So I will do just sort of like one round of just pouring water on the paper, letting that seep through. And someone mentioned like, oh, do you ever taste paper stuff? And this is how you can get around that, is just by making sure you've washed your paper a little bit. You don't want to wash it with your hands. You just want to put it in there and pour a little bit of water over. So you can already see it's kind of fogging up down there. So mostly our water is out. So I will now just grab this and just pour this out in the sink. So now we're really ready to get going. So I will just pour the coffee into that little chamber. And then this is where you can kind of get really, really sort of special and precious with your pour over brewing. So one thing that I think is widely recommended, we mentioned earlier that you're getting bubbles because the beans have CO2 that's being released. And that's called degassing. The other thing we can call it is blooming. And so something that we'll do is we'll have a bloom phase when we're doing pour over, which is really just pouring a little bit of the water in there, just enough to cover all of our grounds, and then letting it sit there for a minute. And you can see, I'll see if I can pull this over without disturbing it too much. You will see, you really can't see it. Well, you will see a lot of gas coming off. So a lot of bubbles. And this is helpful because it kind of means that our coffee is not going to be bubbling or getting disturbed for sort of the main brew session. Blooming the grounds, yeah. This is like one, if you want to impress someone, be like, yeah, like I bloom my pour over because I'm not an animal, That's like one that you can throw in there. Someone recommends a popcorn popper for roasting. That's fine. I've seen some people do that. I've seen some people do it really well. I've seen some people kind of fail tragically with the popcorn roaster or popcorn popper. But kind of, if you have a popcorn popper, kind of a fun thing to give a try. Oh, we have a friend kind of tuning in from Kirkland, which is super fun. Yeah, we could talk about coffee specific or Seattle specific coffee places. I love talking about Seattle coffee places. I actually, half of my team at Google works in Kirkland, in our Kirkland Google office. So that's fun. Yes, someone is noticing this chart again. This is a coffee note tasting chart where it gives you in the middle sort of broad flavors like fruity, sweet, roasted, sour, and then you can kind of get more specific as you go sort of out from the chart. It's a super fun thing. You can just look this up online. You don't have to actually get a poster. Adam, how much coffee do I have in my fancy kettle? Not that much, actually. We're almost running out. I love this kettle, by the way. This is the Fellow EKG kettle, and I am a big fan. Yeah. Okay. So Adam's mentioning that I need a ceiling cam. I do actually want to get a second camera. I do have a small webcam that's set up upstairs for the fish cam. For everybody who tuned in to the Intro to Python for Machine Learning session 2 days ago, we saw the fish, but now I have a fish cam up, so I can switch to that. So come back tomorrow for the formal kickoff of the machine learning track, and we can see the fish. Okay, so now we've let it bloom. If somebody wants to drop the link to register for the machine learning track tomorrow, I would be forever in your debt. So now we are ready to kind of actually brew the coffee. And here people will really, really get precious with like, what's your pour pattern? I really think that there is just a couple things that are important. One, you want to make sure that all your coffee is getting submerged. And the other thing is that you want to try to pour more coffee around the edges. And the thing that this will do is it'll agitate the coffee around the edges and make sure that you're not clogging your filter. So you can see even as I'm pouring this through, it's starting to filter through. And so normally, if you're moving pretty slowly, once you get to the top of your brewer, at least for me, that is about when I say, okay, I have poured enough water, and now I will just let this draw down. And usually the drawdown will take a minute or two, depending on how finely you've ground. Yes, thank you, friends, for dropping the links. Incredible. Oh yeah, okay. So someone mentioned fish names. I'll throw this out. If you want to name one of my fish, I have 5 neon blue rasboras, and I am raffling off the right to name one of my fish, or actually to name 3 of my fish. You can either, if you attend all of our machine learning track sessions, you can have a chance at naming a fish. I'll randomly pick someone who attended all the sessions. If you come up with the best meme for a stream that I've been in, so either a machine learning track stream or this stream, these memes all count. I'll pick the meme I like the best and let that person name a fish. And then the final criteria is if you win our machine learning challenge that I will reveal tomorrow, you also get to name a fish. So these are some fun ways to name one of my fish. And if you want to see that fish, you can tune in tomorrow. Okay, so this is an interesting place that we've gotten to. Recently, I haven't been doing a lot of pour over, and so this is not surprising to me. But we have gotten a situation that I would call stalling, where we're seeing there's still a lot of, you might not be able to see, but there's still a lot of water in our chamber up here, in our little funnel, but it is not coming through very fast. And lots of people have lots of different ideas about stalling. Excuse me. One of them is just maybe you should have ground a little bit coarser. Some people will say this is a bad idea. I don't think it's all that bad to give another little stir just to agitate the grounds in there. And usually that can get you out of the stall scenario. The other thing is you can just give it time. If you wait long enough, eventually that will draw down. The other thing that you can do is, if you are impatient, is just drink what you have immediately and then let the rest of it kind of trickle down. So I will actually do that. I will decant into my mug. I'm really, really filling up the space here. And so we now have a cup of pour over. So I think one thing that people talk about a lot when they're drinking pour over is clarity. I think kind of similar to the Aeropress, but even more so, that paper filter will remove a lot of the coffee oils that give it a sense of body. And so what you're left with is something that, like, honestly almost tastes a little bit like juice. It tastes really tangy. I'm tasting a lot of the fruit. I'm tasting a lot less of those lower notes of some woodiness or some roastiness or like brown sugar or graham cracker. All of those are kind of filtered out, and you're left with more of sort of the more acidic kind of higher notes. Something that people who love like single origins usually like pour over, because you kind of really get a clear sense of like, oh, this coffee came from this place. You can really taste some of those things. That's one of the reasons people really like pour over. Don't we have a session in 2 hours? No, I am not. I am not doing a session in 2 hours. I think there is another session. I think there's one on Python, but it's not one that's part of the machine learning track. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Welcome, John. Yeah. John, other famous sort of food MLH streamer. It's an honor. But yes, we have a lot of coffee set up. We have gone through, just to recap, we have instant espresso, which I would give a 0 on the hassle scale. We have cold brew and French press that I would both give 2s on the hassle scale. We have Aeropress, which I gave a 4 on the hassle scale. And then we have pour over that, in my opinion, it really can range from a 3 all the way up to a 6 in terms of hassle. We need to have a crossover session. Ooh, that would be really fun. I would love to do a crossover tiramisu session. That'd be a blast. Okay, so we have 5 minutes left, and I think I probably actually am going to try to end in 5 minutes. But we'll touch on espresso really quick, and then we will also talk about extraction theory. So we have left out noticeably espresso because espresso is a whole other animal. And to be fair, most of the other coffee sessions we've done at other local hack days, and probably a lot of the future ones, will be really espresso centric. And so I thought this would be a nice chance to really focus on other brew methods that I often don't talk about that very much. But espresso was great. In terms of hassle, it really probably starts at a 5 and it goes up to, to probably 10, right? People can get wildly interested in espresso. I brought out my refractometer to measure strength. A lot of people do things like that. The basic method is you are grinding your beans really, really finely. You are putting those beans into a portafilter, which is this little metal handle that has a really fine mesh. And you are putting that into a machine to push a lot of really, really. Then you get, espresso is really fun. Having an espresso, right? You have to right? You have to refill it with water. You have to. So it is really a lot of hassle. Very, very tasty, and it really gets coffee through. But we have 3 minutes on this idea of extraction theory. So of how coffee tastes different ways. The thing that we're doing is we are trying to, and then we remove that water and we keep the question is, what are you dissolving? Really think of a couple big categories of stuff. Think about there are a couple things that dissolve really quick, being sort of our acids, and salts are just really, really soluble in water. Caffeine actually is usually thought of as easy to dissolve in water. And so it will come out. Next thing usually to dissolve, if you have even more pressure, is usually our sugars. And they do not dissolve quite as quick a category of things that dissolve. And the last, or to get incorporated with the water, are literally people. Right? This is literally sort of the husks are usually the things that give us the flavor of more of woodiness. And a lot of these things, not the most happening in the chat. Okay. Looks like probably we're having some network issues. If anything out of this, please now don't check chat. I can beep boop. Okay, we're 1 minute from the end. Watching this and seeing what's actually coming over. I guess I will close this robot-y voice possible. Thank you for letting me for coffee. Hopefully you were able to get yourself a cup of coffee. I am able to get a better ISP. So happy Tuesday or whatever day it is, friends. See you in chat. Bye.